It's time for another Devo tip on deconstructing the Bible. We're going to look at Malachi chapter 2, verses 1 through 9. Thomas Jefferson is famous for deconstructing the Bible. He carefully arranged his cut and pasted verse selections into an 86-page red leather hand-bound book. So there's no Old Testament, no miracles, nobody is resurrected or ascends to heaven, only a Jesus that Jefferson liked. He claimed that his efforts proved that he was in fact a real Christian, a true disciple of the doctrines of Jesus. While there are a lot of nice stories in the Bible, Jesus heals people, David defeats Goliath, Ruth lives happily ever after. But there are a lot of not so nice stories as well. People drown in Noah's flood. Judas hangs himself. And Jesus talks about hell quite a bit. Are only parts of the good book good? Well, Penn Jillette thinks that reading the Bible is the fast track to atheism. I don't agree. I believe that it's misreading the Bible that makes faith toxic. According to Malachi chapter 2, if we show partiality and cherry pick our favorite Bible passages while deliberately ignoring others, we will drown out the voice of God in Scripture and eventually stumble. So the Lord speaks through Malachi, and he says this: true instruction requires us to listen, lay it to heart, and guard knowledge. So if you're going to deconstruct, I would suggest this. Never read one Bible verse. Let me explain. Consider pulling one sentence from Tolstoy's big War and Peace book. So let's do it. Gazing into Napoleon's eyes, Prince Andrei mused on the unimportance of greatness, the unimportance of life, which no one could understand, and the still greater unimportance of death, the meaning of which no one alive could understand or explain. Now, we can try to interpret this, or we can look at its context. If we did, we'd find that when the wounded Prince Andrei is rescued by Napoleon, he realizes that a single human being, like Napoleon, is incapable of single-handedly moving the course of history. That's pretty profound, isn't it? Yes, context is key. So, in a similar way, every verse of Scripture is part of a paragraph, which is part of a flow of thought, which is part of a book, which is part of the overarching meta-narrative of Scripture. Every verse works with the whole of the Bible. It requires thoughtful research and study. Yet even the Apostle Paul admitted, we know in part. This does not mean that we can't trust the Bible. It means that the full revelation of God is reserved for the age to come. If you're going to deconstruct the Bible, I would also suggest that you would never view the Bible as one book. Now, I know it looks like one book, but let me explain. Consider pulling The Horse and His Boy from the other 6 volumes of C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. The Horse and His Boy is the only book in the series that is not about the children from our world going into Narnia. Instead, it focuses on the native Narnians, living during the last chapter of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, when the grown-up Pevensies are reigning as kings and queens of Narnia. Yeah, reading the entire series is a must. Well, in a similar way, the Bible is a multi-volume set of 66 books. In each book, we'll find the real-life Narnia-like adventures with intriguing characters from rich cultural backgrounds. Okay, there's no talking beavers in the Bible, but whether you read history or poetry or prophecy or a gospel or an epistle or an apocalyptic prophecy epistle, They all work together. In other words, reading the Gospel of John without Genesis, or reading Exodus without the Gospel of Mark, will paint an incomplete picture of God's big plan. We can only do our best to rightly handle the word of truth, as Paul would say in 2 Timothy 2:15, which does not mean that we need to get a PhD. We just need a boatload of tenacity and humility. So, if you are going to deconstruct Scripture, never seek to know Scripture. Seek to know the Lord of Scripture.